Welcome to this week's edition of Black Authors Matter TV, where we interview the latest movers and shakers in the African American literary community. You'll meet some old friends, discover new ones, and stay abreast of the latest book developments around the country and even the world. So sit back and relax for the next 2 hours with Black Authors Matter TV co-hosts Gwen Richardson and Dr. Rhonda Lawson.
Good evening and welcome to the last episode of Black Authors Matter TV for the month of November. I'm Gwen Richardson, your host for tonight, along with my co-host,
Dr. Rhonda Lawson. Good evening, everyone.
And we missed Dr. Rhonda last week, in which I explained to everyone that you were enjoying Veterans Day, and we appreciated your service and that of your family. Because I know you're an Army brat. Were both your parents in the service?
Right. Both my parents were in the Air Force, and
okay.
I joined the Army.
Oh, okay. So you're a military brat, not an Army brat.
Right.
Anyway, thank you for your service. It's important. And so
thank you so much for your support.
Well, you're welcome. So I was born on an Army base. Did I ever tell you that? Fort Sam Houston.
Fort Sam Houston. That's a nice base.
I was born there, but my parents left shortly thereafter. So anyway, this is idle chatter, and I want to let everybody know for the the National Black Book Festival. The photos, we've been posting them for the last couple of weeks, and every day we post about 3 or 4 new ones because we like to do an array for each of the authors' photos. And our photographer did a great job of capturing the event. And for most of the participating authors, he got 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 photos in different positions and photos of their work. So he did a really good job capturing the event. So log on to our Facebook and Instagram pages, and we will continue to post till we're done, and we probably won't be done till the end of the year. So we're bringing on our first guest, and tonight we have 3 guests who have books that are historical in nature in some form. So they're completely different from each other, but they're all historical in nature. And then we have 1 novelist. So we are happy to have for our first guest, Patti Flinn, and Patti is from Black Lick, Ohio, and she's joining us with a book about someone I never heard of, which is really unusual. And she takes a different take on it. She has a whole history of the person, and the book is called The Truest Son of France. So Patti Flinn, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV. You want to make sure you unmute.
Unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Hi. Happy to be here.
Okay.
Well, we're happy to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And you're in Black Lick, Ohio? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm close. I used to be. I moved,
right.
But close enough.
But you're in the middle of in the Midwest, and it's cold there.
It is cold, and it happens suddenly. You know, I know it's Ohio, and you're supposed to be used to it, but I just like to ease into it. But we don't get that.
Well, it was 85 degrees in Houston. So we are hoping. We had a couple
of 49 degrees in DC.
Wow.
So we were hoping. We had a couple of cool days, and then it went right back up. But they're saying the rain is supposed to cool things off later in the week. So because it's too hot. We normally aren't 85 in November.
Yeah, that's hot.
Or like high 70s.
That's hot.
And it's humid. So anyway, enough about the weather. The Truest Son of France. Now, tell us about the person who's essential to this book and what made you go down this path to talk about him.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So a couple years back, I've been writing for a long time. I'm not famous or anything like that, but I've been writing for a long time. And a couple years back, I was a little uninspired with my writing, and I was thinking about quitting. And I just happened to be on Pinterest, and I was just looking at art on Pinterest, and I ran across this image of this Black man, and there was a caption that said he lived at the Palace of Versailles, which was a shock to me because that was my language. You know, I thought I knew a little bit about France. I'd never know that there was a Black man who lived at the Palace of Versailles. And then they said that he actually later on, he was gifted to the mistress of the king. Many years later, he would turn her into the Revolutionary Tribunal during the French Revolution. And I got excited. I said, there's a story here.
Absolutely, there's a story.
Yeah. So I decided to do a lot of research. I'm not a historical history person, at least I wasn't until I started this story. And I started doing a lot of research. There wasn't a whole lot of information on him. The downside to that is you don't have stuff that you can pull from, but the good side is that you can use your imagination and fill in a lot of the blanks. And so, what I wanted to do, because I felt that what I was reading about him was biased and it was so obviously, you know, now we look at it, of course, it's so obviously racist. It led me to question everything that I had been reading about him because all of the memoirs and everything I read was negative about him. They said he was a horrible person. He did this horrible thing, and he was so happy that he did this to this woman, sending her to her death. And I thought, you know, that's acceptable if you're looking at him as a character, not as a person or a human being. And I knew there had to have been a story there, especially when I found out that he came to France enslaved. He was a child slave. And, you know, it turned the whole story on its head for me because it changed what I thought about the king, what I thought about Jean du Barry, and what I thought about his story. And so I wanted to tell that. I ended up writing 3 full-size books. So it's a trilogy. The first book is called The Greatest Thing. The second book is called The Devil's Berries. And the last book is coming out in December. It's called The Truest Son of France. And with it, you know, it's just been a labor of love. It really has. I kind of felt that it was meant for me to write the story about this man that I'd never heard of before. I think somebody was supposed to tell a story. And I think maybe it was me.
You know, I'm really glad that you did tell a story because there are so many figures in our history who have been villainized because only a certain faction told their story and they told their story the way they wanted to tell their story. And we never hear the real thing. And when I remember doing research on Akhenaten, who was an Egyptian king. And he was hated and they tried to erase him out of history. If you look at any of his statues, they were all chiseled out because they didn't want you to see his face. They always made his statues look like he had woman hips. You know, they wanted to do everything that they could to villainize this man's name just because he didn't subscribe to the multi gods that they were worshiping at the time. And so we see that this happens throughout history. When you want to villainize somebody, tell the story the way you want to tell the story, because there aren't very many people who are going to argue with you or dispute that.
Exactly. And when I was writing this story, I knew that what I was going to do to Jean du Barry. I didn't intend to do what I did to her in the beginning, but I made her this. Once I found out his story, and once I thought what I knew his story was, it changed her. You know, it changed my perspective of her. And I was a little bit worried because I thought everybody's writing about how she was this wonderful person. And was she a wonderful person? I don't know. We don't have the records. All I know is, all I know is for over 200 years, they've been saying horrible things about him and nothing negative about her. So my story is not going to be a drop in a bucket in weight of undoing 200 years of negative press that he's gotten. So I stopped worrying about that.
Okay, give us his full name because I don't think we said it at the top.
His name is Louis Benoit Zamore.
And what years in France are we talking about?
So
What
he
time period?
is, yeah, he was suspected to have been born in 1762 in India. He was taken into slavery. He ended up in France around 1772. He was either gifted to or bought by King Louis XV, who then gifted him to Madame Jeanne du Barry. Um, he would live with them until the king died. In 1774, when the king died, Jeanne du Barry was exiled because she famously had a horrible relationship with Marie Antoinette. They hated each other. So Marie Antoinette kicked Jeanne du Barry out of the palace, kept some more there for a couple of years, and then a few years down the road, they released her from exile, and she took him back along with her property to live at a Chateau Lucien in a little kind of a little suburb next to Versailles. And he would stay there with her for over 20 years. Unbeknownst to her, he started going into Paris and he met some revolutionaries before it was a revolution. He became a Jacobin. He believed in the rights of man. He believed in freedom and equality. He believed in all of these things that, we believed in that made the United States that we were supposed to believe here. He believed in all that. So, but by day, he was going back to the chateau and still being her servant. So it wasn't until 1793 that he was found out. She discovered that he was working for the revolutionaries, and they had a huge fight. She kicked him out. A little while later, she was arrested. She ended up going to the guillotine. And so for many, many years, people have been blaming him and calling him a traitor for having turned on her because she was so close to him. And they were very, very close. But what we understand is that the closest that you experience as someone who's trapped with someone is different from the closest that you would have if they were an actual friend or relative or somebody you wanted in your life. So, my take was a little bit different. I didn't see their relationship as close as everyone else seemed to see it. And so, in my way of thinking, he didn't betray her as much as he protected himself. And I think he kind of had to.
Probably
I'm
so.
skeptical when I read something that someone wrote about someone else and they tell you that person's motivations or what they were thinking. You don't know what they were thinking unless they told you. You can't assume what somebody's thinking. And a lot of times people will assume something that's completely false. And that happens today. That happens just in regular life. Someone can misread your motives, ascribe something to you that's not there or the opposite of what your thoughts are, or maybe you're not even thinking at all about what they're talking about. And then but what I don't like is when someone writes it about someone else. And we see that often in journalism or books that are written about people, where they'll say that person's thinking was, how do they know what their thinking was? Unless that person said it. And if they said it, it should be a quote.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I think this is the reason why I enjoy the movie Wicked so much. The first time I ever experienced the story was when I went to see the play, and I realized that the Wicked Witch of the West was villainized because of the color of her skin.
Huh.
And because of the way they told the story, they made it seem like she was a villain, but she was really misunderstood. And so I was excited when I got to see the movie, and then I read the book, and the book totally shows how she was misunderstood, even to the battle with what's the little girl's name?
Dorothy?
Dorothy?
Dorothy. Dorothy, yeah. The battle with Dorothy, it was all misunderstood.
I
was
still
about to
haven't
say
seen Wicked.
I haven't seen it either. I
haven't
don't
seen
know if I'm not compelled. It's not something that I'm compelled to go watch.
Well, I mean, whether you're compelled or not, I mean, that's the thing is, that's really what the story is about, is how the Wicked Witch of the West was actually villainized because of the color of her skin. And
Which
that's why
was
I was really
green.
interested.
Green, the
Right,
green
because
color.
she was green. She was the
Okay.
only green person in the country. And
Okay. Interesting.
that's why I thought it was interesting that they made the Green Witch or the Wicked Witch of the West a black woman when they decided to do the movie. I was like, that's an interesting turn.
Mhm.
Yeah. So now the Louis that you wrote about, that you said he was depicted at a museum. Was that what you said? You saw a painting or something. What did you
Oh,
say at the top of at the
so
beginning?
I saw a little image of him on Pinterest.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
Somebody took a picture of his portrait actually is hanging. Well, what there's a lot of controversy about Louis Benoit Zamora, from his
Okay.
ethnicity to his actual age to how he ended up there. There is a portrait hanging in a museum in Florida, actually, that for many years was thought to be him, and now they're saying maybe it's not him. I suspect it is him. um,
Mhm.
but of course, I can't prove any of this. I am so wanting someone to read my books and just remember something or find something, because I feel like there's information about him out there somewhere that we just don't have yet. And I'm dying to get my hands on it.
Now, you said that you speak French. Is that,
I
did I
I
misunderstand?
I took French. I'm
Okay.
trying to relearn French. My
Okay.
French has never been really great. I
Okay.
went to
It's
France
hard to learn.
and I tried to speak it, and they were so nice to me. They really were,
Mhm.
because I was just embarrassed of myself trying to speak French. But
And
I'm
it's so
trying.
funny when in France you're sitting there struggling with the language because you want to be respectful and try to speak it, and then they'll say, "You know, I speak English." I'm like, "No, I speak English."
Exactly what happened.
Yeah, that's the only language that I took in school.
Oh yeah,
My only foreign language. I didn't take Spanish because I was on the East Coast. I know I did really well in French.
yeah. Did you keep
Mhm.
it? Do you
No, I
still?
only know bonjour and au revoir. That's about it.
Okay,
Oh, je m'appelle. I know how to
okay.
do my name. And my
I,
name actually
I
is
lived
Genevieve in
in
French, but it's Guinevere in English.
Oh
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
well,
Yeah.
I
I
lived
had
in
a one.
Belgium for 5 years.
Do they speak
And
French in Belgium?
yes, well, it depends on which part of Belgium. I lived in the French-speaking part of Belgium, but there's also a Danish part of Belgium.
Okay.
Um, I lived in the French part of Belgium, and I tried. I think I might have picked up a couple of words, but I worked around too many Americans, so I couldn't keep it going.
That's the thing, unless you're in it all the time,
Right.
Right.
you lose it. But I'm trying. I'm trying. I go back. I'm gonna do better.
Yeah, and it's not a language that's spoken in America a lot, in a lot of places. Whereas Spanish is really increasingly becoming like the second language. And I'm in Texas, so it's all around me. But I still don't. I only know about 12 words, and I know enough to uh, get my point across. But now you have those apps on the phone where a person can just talk into their phone, and then it's not always exact. The interpretation is not always exact, but um, a lot of the people here that do any kind of construction work inside, maintenance work, landscaping, they're Hispanic, and a lot of them don't speak very little English.
Mhm.
So, but I know about 12 words, and that's it. But I was very good at conjugating verbs in French. When I took French, a lot of the lessons are conjugating verbs, and I was really good at that. I was really good at French. I had a wonderful teacher, um, a wonderful black woman who she was actually my fourth, fifth, and seventh grade teacher, because she kept moving. Each year she said the higher grades she got paid more. So she kept moving. And then when I went to the sixth grade, she was already teaching the seventh grade. But she went on an international trip. It was unusual. She went around the world with International Reading Association or somebody like that. And she came back with slides about France and Holland and places she went. So she was showing us slides and she gave us all our names, our French names, like the whole class. This was in fifth grade, I think. She gave every class member their name in French. She
Oh
had
yeah.
cards that she put on the table on their desk. So we all spoke, called each other by our French names, and then she taught us some verbiage. She was an amazing teacher. So that's why when it was time to pick an elective, I ended up picking French because uh, it fascinated me. But you know, the ideas we have about France are that it wasn't really a prejudice place because a lot of Americans who were escaping the racism here would go to France. But they got rid of slavery uh, years before we did. When did slavery end in France? Do you know?
It ended the first time in 1794 and the second time in 1848, I believe.
Oh, so they
So,
reinstituted it?
yes,
Oh,
Napoleon
oh,
reinstituted slavery
oh,
in Haiti, in Saint Domingue. So
okay,
there was, France is an interesting place because technically they didn't have slavery in France. Their motto was there is no slavery in France because they didn't have it on the mainland. But they
okay,
had all of their slavery in,
and
United States and in the islands. And so
okay.
they did engage and profit from slavery. But yeah, I'd always
You,
heard that France was a safe place to go as well.
but
Safe
did
for.
you
Mhm.
there is a monument in Paris. It looks like chain links.
Mhm.
And so you know what monument I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah,
It's supposed to be a monument that honors or memorializes the end of slavery in France. So it's
yes.
very interesting to hear that because they must have thought it was around somewhere for them to have erected that monument.
Yeah, well, yeah, the monument's relatively new.
It is.
uh,
Okay,
It is.
but
okay,
but yeah, and I don't want to say that I do still think it's a great place for Black people. It really is. But they did go through some of the same things that we go through here in the United States. They didn't have, like I said, they didn't have the same degree of slavery. Um, how do I say this? It was pretty brutal in Haiti. It was pretty brutal in the islands,
mhm,
as brutal as it was down south. But the people on the mainland didn't see any of that. Um,
okay. So it's like out of sight, out of mind kind of thing.
exactly. And sometimes some of the nobles would bring their enslaved people to France, but they, under very limited and regimented circumstances. So they weren't supposed to keep they were allowed to visit with their enslaved people, but they weren't allowed to keep their enslaved people there. Some people got around that.
Hmm.
There were some outposts of enslaved people on the mainland. So it was really complicated. It was really different from the way it was here in the United States, which is one of the challenges of doing this research. I didn't understand any of that.
Do
I
you
didn't
think
understand.
it do you think that it's because what we learned when we went to Amsterdam is that there was slavery there, but they didn't like to call it slavery. They don't like to talk about it. And so they'll say things like they worked, or they won't say that it was actually
Yeah.
slavery. So I wonder if that was maybe the case a little bit in France as well.
I think so. And I think also they were downplaying it as as
Mhm.
they're doing right now, downplaying what it really is and making it seem as though they're just people who are working for us. They're just people who are happily working for us and they're being taken care of. And if you don't see it, you don't have to know. You don't have to think about it.
Right.
But there
That was
were.
the way they sold it
Mhm.
to slaves, although they didn't have any options. But they had them believing that they couldn't take care of themselves and that they were taking care of them. And when it was just just enough of an existence for them to be able to work. Because in order to work, you have to have food and you have to be decently fed,
Mhm.
you know, to have
Mhm.
the energy to pick crops. This, you can't do it on an empty stomach. So they, it was all for self-preservation, uh, in terms of the landowners or the slave owners. It was really for their own benefit.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Mhm. So what are your plans in the future? Do you plan to visit France more in the future? And
I will go back. I've been back. I've been there twice now. I will go
okay,
back again because I've done this research for this trilogy. I'm kind of deep in that time period and that place right now. I have
okay.
another series based on a character from this novel. Her name is Veronique, and people seem to love Veronique. So she's a young Black woman from Burgundy. So, um, so I'm probably going to do some more with her because I like the perspective from a young Black woman in a time that doesn't is not considering what she's doing in the world. And there was a whole lot going on during the time. So I'm going to lean into her story.
Well, there's a saying that history is told from the vantage point of the victor whenever there's conflicts, wars, or
Exactly.
whatever.
Mhm.
Mhm,
Exactly.
mhm. So if you didn't win or your side didn't win, then your history either gets completely erased or it gets misinterpreted or, uh, you
And
know,
and thus the reason why, Patty,
it's
your
so
books
important.
are so important,
Yes.
because um it could be, if it hadn't been for you, nobody would ever know this man's story.
Oh,
Right.
that's a very nice thing to say. I His story is out there, bits and pieces of it, and he shows up in media here and there.
Here and there.
Um, yeah, but I don't think a lot of people in the United States knew anything about him. So I'm very pleased to get this out here, and I appreciate the fact that you say that because it means a lot to me. Because there's the writer me that my ego. I love to write a story that's fascinating, but there's also the fact that I wrote this because of him, and I wanted to get his story out there too. So thank you.
Okay. Now, what's your background? Are you a professor? Do you teach? What is your like day job? Oh, wait, I mean, if you can say.
No, I'm in administrative support. So I do not teach.
Okay.
Though I thought I might want, at one point in my life. But it's interesting because some of my characters end up teaching. Zamora ended up teaching. Um,
Okay.
Veronique, her mother ended up teaching. So I have an appreciation for teachers. And maybe someday, I've always thought maybe I'd be a substitute teacher. I don't know.
Okay. Well, it's the topic
No.
you picked is one that people would call scholarly, and so that's why I thought maybe you were a professor. It's not your typical topic.
Well,
Yeah.
you can always market your book to the colleges, and maybe
You
they can buy
can.
the books in bulk, and it could be added to people's curriculum.
Wouldn't that be something? You
Yeah.
guys think a lot of my little story. Thank you. Giving me ideas.
It's great to bring people to light that are little known or unknown, from the past and that are important, or just people we need to know. There's a lot of people that we know about that really haven't done very, very much of anything, but we know their names.
Yeah.
And so, we need to, and it's happening more and more. And you're an example of bringing people from the past into the present for us to know about them and what they're about
Thank
and
you.
what the contributions they make.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
did get a chance to speak at on a panel at a conference of the National Society of French Colonial National Society. I did speak on that.
Oh, okay.
And it was
Wow.
fascinating being in a room full of historians because I am not a historian. This is all new to me.
Oh,
I
okay.
feel like I'm, wading in water that I'm not supposed to be in, but I enjoy doing it. And as I said, you know, I hope I prick their interest because if the real historians um, dig at it more, maybe they'll find out more about him. So who
There you
knows?
go. There you go.
Yeah, and you are a historian because of all the work that
Yeah,
you've done that made you.
don't say the real
Shortchange
historians,
yourself.
Patty.
Yeah. Yeah, don't shortchange yourself. So, but thank you so much for being a guest on the show, and congratulations on your book. Sounds
Thank you.
fascinating. Or your series, it's a trilogy.
It's a
So,
trilogy. Thank you. And we should all get the three of us get together and help each other with our French.
I like that idea. I like it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you.
a great night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So our next guest is also writing from a historical perspective, but not as far back in history. Dana Williams, she has a book called Toni at Random, and it's about Toni Morrison. And so it recently came out, and
I like the name of the book, Toni at
yeah,
Random.
Toni at Random.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, how are you
How are
doing?
you?
Good. How are you?
Wonderful. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yeah. So when exactly did Toni at Random, when was it released?
It's June 16th, I think it is.
Of this year. So it's a
Mhm.
new book.
Mhm.
And we've heard a lot about Toni Morrison before and since her death. I went to the movies to see her documentary.
Mhm.
We were gifted tickets to a pre-screening, and I learned some things about her that I had no idea about. And from that, but she was really a singular person in terms of
Yeah.
just being unusual. Just, she had a tremendous fortitude.
Yeah,
She
I
had a
agree.
tremendous confidence in herself and what she believed in.
Yep.
So I'll let you tell it. Now, Toni at Random, is this about her being at Random House?
Yes.
Or, okay, all right. So is that where your story begins, kind of her Random House career? Is that
Well, it really looks like very intentionally at the years that she was editor, but I talk a little bit about what I think is the intellectual formation that informs part of her work as an editor. And even before she went to Random House, as a senior editor for trade, she was a textbooks editor at a small company called L.W. Singer. So I don't quite start at Random House, but that's the crux of the matter.
okay? And
Yeah.
you, can you show us the cover? I think I see it on the shelf behind you.
Yeah, she's in the background. I
Can
usually,
you,
yeah, I
can
was
you?
gonna say, I always have one close by too.
Okay,
So,
all right,
He's
yes,
watching over you.
yeah.
yes. The iconic writers, legendary editorship. So
Yes.
it's about. So
Okay.
what years? Well, what years of her career in terms of the dates, but also her years in terms of what what age she was when she went there versus when she uh, left
It was
or
late
stopped being editor.
60s,
Okay,
late
late
60s when
60s.
she went to Singer, and she was there for just over a year and a half. But Random House had actually bought Singer. So it's a murky kind of like, there's no clean start date because she was actually working for Random House while she was at Singer as they transitioned, eventually closed the office. And similarly, the end date is a bit murky in the sense that she stopped editing full time in the early 80s, but would continue to take on one project here or there while she was writing. And then finally by 84, she just said, I'm done with this part of the editorship, and then picks it up again when she edits Toni K. Bambara's These Bones or Those Bones Are Not My Child.
Okay, so who was her publisher for her books?
The first book, The Bluest Eye, is actually by Holt Reinhardt. And then she shifts over to Knopf, and Knopf and Random House are a part of the same media group or the same bookseller, but they didn't want the conflict of having her be a writer at the same place where she was an editor. So when she went to Random House, she had the decision about whether or not she would go to Random House or Knopf, and if she would publish with Random House or Knopf. So she decided to do trade work at Random House, and then to have Knopf publish her books after Holt Rinehart.
Well, I think I read somewhere that she was a very voracious editor.
Yeah.
She took no prisoners basically. And I think she would even do that with her own stuff. She would, I think I saw somewhere where she said she would take an entire chapter and then edit it so much it would just be a couple of paragraphs by the time she was finished.
Well, I mean, in terms of volume, there is a lot that she does, more than 45 books. And then the way that she edited really did change based on who the writer was or who the book was. There were some folks where it was very light touch, very minimal. And then there were other instances where she was there from the beginning. Like, let's think through this idea. Like, does this paragraph work? Does this chapter work? Does this idea work? Does this character work? So it would really depend on what the book was, who the writer was, and what she thought was needed the most for a book.
Makes sense.
Now, what made you focus on Toni in terms of this book, this particular book?
Yeah, I remember being in a graduate class at Howard where we were reading Leon Forrest, Toni K. Bambara, Gail Jones, Henry Dumas, and John McCluskey, all fiction. And I had done my early work in Black women playwrights. So I thought like I kind of wanted to do work in theater in terms of my focus, but I was curious about novels because that was my favorite thing to read. I like to see plays, but if I was going to be a scholar where I was reading all the time, I should probably do something with fiction because plays aren't meant to be read. They really aren't. They're meant to be watched, seen, performed. So I took this class on the African American narrative and I was like, I'm enjoying these books, like, but I'm curious why these in particular, like why these writers? And the teacher for that class was Eleanor Traylor, who was also a faculty member with Toni Morrison when Toni Morrison taught at Howard. And so they became very good friends. And so she casually says, oh, those are some of the novels that Toni edited when she was at Random House. And my mind just went like, what? Like, I didn't know Toni Morrison was an editor. And I had heard that she had done something with the Black Book, but that was kind of vague. You know, I wasn't exactly sure what it was. So I really got curious about the project, really enjoyed it. And I thought that initially that I would do my dissertation on Toni Morrison's fiction and the fiction that she edited to begin to understand that relationship. What was the push-pull, the back and forth between her as a fiction writer and her as an editor? And I actually did start the project with that in mind, but I was, young and hard-headed when Dr. Traylor told me that project was too big for a dissertation. I was like, whatever, I'll show her. And of course, 6 months later, I was like, oh, I can't actually do this.
Just kidding.
Yeah, right. I know. Take back. Yeah. So at that point, I said, all right, I'm going to pick one of these writers. So I focused on Leon Forrest, but I said that I would never let the project leave really the forefront of my mind. And then, interestingly enough, because I had chosen Leon Forrest and I had done a year at Northwestern as a Ford Foundation Fellow, and there was an inaugural Leon Forrest lecture after he had made his transition. Morrison gave that lecture. I went to the talk. We talked a little bit after. And I was talking about Leon Forrest, and she looked kind of like, why do you know this about Leon Forrest? Like, few people know this. Like, and I said, well, my book's just about to go to press on Leon Forrest. And so similarly, she said, how did you get interested in it? And I said, well, I was in Dr. Traylor's grad seminar. She's like, oh, Eleanor, like that, like, oh, okay. And I said, and what I really originally wanted to do was that class was on your editing fiction writers. And I really want to think about the editorship. And she said, that was really hard work and nobody talks about it. So if there's any way that I can be helpful, let me know. Well, at that point, I'm like, oh, Toni Morrison has volunteered to help me. Okay, I can do this. So without, like, in short order, I probably went to figure out when I could get to Princeton because that's where she was teaching at the time. She gave me the information for the person who like helped her with her schedule. I emailed her immediately and it's like first available. And really, I began working on the project in 2005, like after that first interview, where we talked a little bit about what the editorship entailed. But the project didn't expand until many years later because I was thinking I wanted to focus on the fiction. But it was this kind of ironic thing where she would not talk about the fiction, like interview after interview, and she'd talk about everything about the fiction. And I'm thinking, like, is she playing games with me? Like, what's happening here? And what I didn't realize then until like and I didn't realize until many years later is that I was probably being edited by Toni Morrison in the sense that she's like, this project is bigger than just the fiction. And so I can remember it was probably around 2010, 2012 or so. I said, I think I'm going to have to move beyond the fiction. I think I'm going to have to think about the whole editorship. And she was kind of like, okay, I think you're right. Like, it's about time you come along, you know? So then I began to expand the project, and I just thought it was really interesting because there were so few people who had talked about her as editor. And you mentioned Sing the Pieces I Am when it came out. I know the director loosely, and similarly, he invited me to the screening. But at that point, there was enough of a reputation. I had done enough conference presentations on Morrison's work as editor that people knew that I was working on the book. So, and Miss Morrison's assistant had been helping with the film. And so when they were talking about that period in her life and wanting to cover in the film that period in her life where she was an editor, Renee actually put them in contact with me to say, hey, like, can you look at this? Go, like, where do we find certain materials? Because this is going to be an interesting part of the documentary. And all I was thinking was, please, please, please don't like have the big reveal before this book comes out. And it was just enough of a teaser for people to say, and did you see that part about Toni Morrison as editor? That's really interesting. And it was at that point that I thought, like, let's try to create some buzz and some momentum to say yes, and there will be a book on it soon.
Right. Yeah, because that was something that a lot of people didn't know about.
Yeah.
Most people knew of her as a novelist, as a writer, and they didn't know how she got there exactly. And but she had a major editing career at a time when there weren't very many Black women in that position.
Not at all. Marie Brown is still with us, and she was at Doubleday at the same time that Morrison was at Random House. But outside of, a few folks, there were a couple of males, Phil Petrie, I mean, male or female in terms of African Americans. Charles Harris was actually at Random House before Morrison was, and is probably deserves as much of an intimate study as Morrison has because he is the person who understood the industry from top to bottom. He understood everything about making a book. And he actually left Random House to found the Howard University Press. And Morrison had just left Howard teaching and moved to Random House. They had a very brief moment of overlap, but she was, a lone ranger of sorts.
Yes, she was. And I didn't realize that she had won the Pulitzer. Was it the Pulitzer? I think it was when she went to Sweden. I think it was Sweden that
the Nobel.
It was the Nobel. Okay, okay. I couldn't remember if it was the Pulitzer or the Nobel. Yep. And I didn't even know they did that. This is what's coming back to me when I saw that. I didn't even know that they gave a Nobel Prize for any kind of literary work at all. I didn't even know that was a thing.
It's the whole body of literature, which is like really how it distinguishes it from the Pulitzer. The Pulitzer is usually on one book, whereas the Nobel is like you have like
the body
a whole body of work that we think, is just really remarkable. It was not without pressure. Like there was a campaign really to have her recognized as a major American writer. The National Book Award, the Pulitzer, like literally it was, the 2024, it might have been 20, whenever Oscar So White came out and then Publishing So White and We Need Diverse Books, like that was happening in the 80s because like there was just like complete disregard for Black writers. So the kind of public campaign where more than 100 writers and scholars took out a full page ad in the New York Times saying recognize Toni Morrison as like a really quintessential American writer. And that then also led to her popularity.
Oh, okay. I didn't know about that ad. But those things do work.
They do.
Those
like the pressure, public pressure makes a difference because, that's true of pretty much anything. People will only do what you make them do. Like, what is it? like Frederick Douglass, like freedom, like it's something that you like you have to nurse, you have to sit at freedom's bedside all the time, essentially is what he said. Like you have to really push it. That kind of power doesn't concede anything unless you insist that something else happen.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was so much about her that I didn't know before I saw that documentary.
Yeah.
And I know I wasn't alone. A
Yep, I
lot of
agree.
people didn't know that much about her. She was always very calm when she talked about whatever it was she was talking about.
Yeah.
She
I
was
can
always
appreciate that. Yeah,
very
I
calm.
appreciate how contemplative it was. Like whatever question you ask her, you could tell that she had thought about it for a long time already, you know?
Yes.
Mhm.
Just a very thoughtful and deliberate person. And I can say for the most part, that public persona is and that kind of gregariousness and kind of seriousness and matter of factness, like telling you to your face that something's stupid. Like, we remember when that lady asked the question, like, when are you going to write about white people? And she said, you cannot know how racist that is. Like, just matter of fact, dead on, not I'm playing nice because this is going to be televised. Yeah, she was just, that's an incredibly racist question. Yeah.
I mean, well, it's not only racist, it's just stupid. I mean,
Yeah, well, there's that. So I guess to some degree we can say that, she was like she was euphemistic. It was soft, and she would say, "No, that's just stupid." Yeah.
Yeah, it's
but
kind of like when people say, well, how come we don't have a White History Month?
Yeah.
mhm,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
or they'll I get these comments at least 3 times a week on our National Black Book Festival Facebook page that somebody comments and says, when is the National White Book Festival? And I just block and delete, but I really want to tell them it's every
Today,
other
tomorrow,
event.
right
Every
now,
other event.
yesterday.
Yeah, just
Right.
because
Yeah.
they have
But
one or two
if you
black
were open to
people.
a real if they were open to a real conversation, I wouldn't mind having that conversation
Yeah.
because
But
I
they're
think a
not.
lot of times people
Right.
being exclusionary by saying we want to promote black books or what
Mhm.
have you,
Right.
and they
And
don't realize that in majority white spaces that black books are pushed to the side.
Mhm.
They're not given the same exposure. They're not given the same publishing benefits. There's so much, and if
Mhm.
we don't we and there are so many white people who will look at a book and see a black face on it and automatically think, oh, this book isn't for me.
Mhm.
So they're not going to read it. So if we're not supporting our books and they're not supporting our books, then where does that leave our black authors?
It's tough. I mean, and that's part of the point that Morrison was making around the reader, saying, like, listen, people, the default reader or the
yeah,
default narrator for so long has been white. I
right.
don't have interest in doing that. Like, you can assume that whoever is talking in my book is a black person and that I am talking to a black reader. And people don't
Mm.
necessarily recognize that without even having to state it, the assumption is white.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
default is white. That's
Hmm.
that's what it is for most things in
Hmm.
America.
When I was a
So
teenager and went to modeling school, I'm never going to forget that our instructor for the day was talking about, oh yeah, I went to Barbizon.
I didn't know that. See, I've learned something. Ron and I've been friends for years and had this show for 5 years. She never told me she went to
Well,
modeling
Yeah, I
school.
saw
I
you
didn't
say you went to modeling school.
think about it until this specific moment.
Okay.
Our instructor was talking about the all-American look. And she said the all-American look is blonde hair and blue eyes. And I sat there thinking, well, where does that
Well,
leave me?
that's, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and the other part of it that is so insidious is that's not even true.
No.
Like
Mm-hmm.
the number of people who are actually white, blue haired, and I mean white, blonde hair and blue eyed, like abysmally small.
Hmm.
And yet
Right.
we
Right.
are
Well,
leading, we're having that as the standard.
especially those that are naturally blonde,
Right. Yeah.
because only a small percentage of the people that you see with blonde hair, just look at their roots and look
Hmm.
at their eyebrows, they might are
Hmm.
actually blonde. Because blondes, it's a small portion of the world that grows blonde haired people.
Yep. But we have somehow
But
made that, the world has somehow made that it's standard. And so part of the adjustment has to be to say, no, wait, that's not it. And the
Mm.
pushback against saying that we dare to imagine that a standard of beauty does not follow that same rubric. Like there's always resistance to that.
Right.
And the interesting thing is, like writers like Morrison and so many of the writers that she edited didn't try to say, no, the standard of beauty is this. Instead of that, it was trying to say all of these things are beautiful. Like, let's not
Right.
exclude this. That's something that I think is um, just like an asset of sorts. The way that Wale Soyinka describes it in the book of Africa is it is like Africa's greatest gift to the world, the humanism, the notion that I don't have to, my goodness is not contingent upon making you bad. Like I can be good as a function of myself. Yeah, I
Right.
don't need
Hmm.
to put you down
Right.
to
You
make
don't need
my
to
thing.
villainize
Right.
someone else
Right.
in order to feel good
Hmm.
about yourself.
Hmm.
Mhm. And a person who does, and Toni Morrison did allude to that, or she mentioned that in the documentary when she said, and it's something that stuck with me. She said, if you can only feel good if somebody else is on their knees, what
Yep.
does that say about you?
Yep. Yep.
That's and that's so sometimes when people and with the Black Book Festival, for example, I tell people if you don't have a problem with Cinco de Mayo or St. Patrick's Day or Chinatown, then leave us alone because this
Yeah.
is this is our event. This is what we want to call it. This is what we want to call ourselves, and we get to decide. And guess what? People of all nationalities come to our event because we don't make people feel like they
That's right.
shouldn't be there
Hmm.
when we do stuff.
Yeah, there's a welcome aspect to it. And
Yes,
similarly, I think it's interesting, as important as Morrison is to African American literature, and as clear as she was that she was an African American writer, when she edits a number of different books, like all of the authors, aren't Black. And she would say that. She's like, now all of the books that I edited weren't by Black writers, and I didn't even like all of them. But that's not the point. The point is, the point is you give people the space to think and have their ideas tested out with audiences. Like
yes,
that's what you're trying to do to like see what's happening with the discourse. Is the argument solid? Is the story interesting? So having an understanding that the world is better when there are more voices than no voices or
yes,
one voice, like is part of what I see is like critically important and for us to think about in terms of like Black books, Black authors, Black bookstores,
hmm,
um, Black publishers, and then the whole industry really, because the industry still really does have a very long way to go in terms of diversity.
it does.
Yeah.
It really does. A lot of the people who then this is what we run into, and that really irritates me, but I have to live with it. But I try to do a workaround. A lot of the gatekeepers for the Black authors are not Black people.
Hmm.
And so they don't necessarily look for Black spaces for them to promote themselves, to promote the author. The person who's the marketer, publicist, or whatever, they're not necessarily looking for Black spaces. They're looking at, Good Morning America or something like that, which is great. I think if someone gets on there, that's a great come up. But you need a solid readership that's going
Yep,
to
you got to
stick
have that
with
base
you.
first.
Yeah,
Yep.
come hell or high water.
And the
And that,
gatekeepers, I mean, it's really interesting. It's one of the things that I hope people will find useful about the book, especially writers, like trying to understand what are the questions you need to ask? What are the things that you need to insist on? Because the way that she
Right.
tried to nurture and take care of people who would have otherwise been taken advantage of, I think is instructive. And then she was also, Random House was one of the last publishing houses where the writer or the editor didn't have to take the book to committee. The editor could go straight to the editor in chief and say, hey Gwen, I found this like incredible writer. I really want to publish this book by Rhonda Lawson. Here's the pitch, here's the audience. And as editor, we could say, all right, go for it. How much are you thinking for the advance? How many copies do we need to print? How are we going to market? What's publicity going to look like? What are we trying to do? Every other house had to go to a committee. And in that committee, you had, say, 12 other editors.
Okay.
And you're the only Black woman editor in the room. And when
Mm.
you make your pitch for Gwen's book, then editor number two says, I don't get it. And editor number three says, I don't really see how this resonates. Editor number four says, nope. Editor number five says, well, maybe. And then editor number six goes, I don't see where it lands. So that gatekeeping was happening by default. Like before it
Mhm.
ever got to the shelf, it never
Mhm.
stood a chance because the
Mhm.
people sitting around the room just didn't have the vision and couldn't see. I don't know that I would
And they
read this.
probably didn't look like the editor or didn't look like the writer.
Oh, absolutely not. Because you
No,
got one
no.
Black editor in the room.
No, it's
Like
a
there was
room full of
no
white people.
house with more than one
No.
Black editor.
And
So you
this
have
is
one
why
Black editor.
representation matters.
Mhm.
Yeah, it absolutely matters because you're
Right.
trying to convince everybody in the room. And that's now I got an advance for this book. I got a contract for this book. Then you got to
Mhm.
go to the design team. Then you have to go to like everything in pre-production. You got to go to publicity and marketing. And you have to say, um, you can't sell this book at this bookstore. You need to sell this book at this bookstore because this is where the traffic's going to come from. But Black bookstores aren't on the list. So when you look at like Toni Morrison's archive, part of what you see is list of like Black bookstores, list of like readers that she knows that she can get blurbs from. So you had to build that network and build that community because it wasn't built for you in the same way that it's built at other places and other houses.
Right.
So I think it's important for writers to think about what should I be looking out for? Like, yep, my agent's looking out for me, possibly, or as best as your agent can. But you also have to say, like, hey, when I do this book launch, I want to do this book launch at this location. I mean, like really, really small stuff. Like when I did
Mhm.
the launch in DC, I said I really want a Black bookstore. So I went with Mahogany. Mahogany
Mhm.
doesn't have a physical space that could accommodate the crowd in the same way. So I said, let's go to Martin Luther King Library because like that has a particular kind of resonance for me. It's newly renovated, but I did all of my graduate work there. The space is familiar and you got everything like like everybody's there. So,
Okay.
they give you like the warning, like, well, it's a public library and we're a cooling station. So there may be some outbursts. And I'm like, I've been in this library my whole life. Homeless people don't scare me. You know, like as a matter of fact, like I know that like part of the time they're sitting here, they're reading. Yep, I will answer the question and I will engage. But you have to then, to be able to tell you and hope that you have a team that says, okay, if that's what you want to do, if you think that's your base, because Mahogany
Yeah.
has a list of 10,000 people who they know have bought their books. I could go
Mhm.
Mhm.
somewhere else. And I did my second DC event at Politics and Prose because that's a different kind of readership, a very sophisticated readership, sure, but not necessarily Black. So they want to read Morrison too, but it's a different kind of approach altogether and making sure that you're in conversation with your team to say, this is what I think matters. Like having this event here, making sure that you send review copies to these influencers. And by influencers, I don't necessarily mean social media, but I think that's important too. I'm thinking like, here are the folks that people in the community are looking for. When I'm looking for a blurb, I'm not looking for a blurb from like Amy Tan because people that I'm reading aren't reading Amy Tan,
Well,
so you're
right.
trying to find like who's the folks who when I pick up a book and I go, okay, Amani Perry had this to say about this book. I might open it and flip and see what's inside. So those are all of the things
Mhm.
that I think writers have to take into consideration when you're saying like, how do I sell the book? And then you have to make the decision, what's most important to me in terms of the idea that I'm able to convey, and am I going to have the flexibility to be able to do that? Or are they going to try to force me to have a certain conversation? So, and of course, like I published this book with Amistad, which is the oldest Black imprint that is
Mhm.
still in
Mhm.
existence. And that was really important to me. Like I wanted to make sure that whatever attention the book got, whatever um kind of critical success or engagement. And I wanted to make sure that like it could be done well, with a Black team. So, I mean, I tell people I was like fortunate in the sense that from acquisition all the way to promotion, like I tried to make sure that there was as much engagement. And as a matter of fact, I'm trying to think, I don't think there was a single guy on my team. I had like overwhelmingly women of color like on the team for this book. So that was exciting to me, and like every opportunity I have to make sure that I can engage audiences, like, which is why I was like quickly, like I can't say quickly completely because I'm in email hell. I stay in email hell. But as soon as I got to the email, I was quick to say yes to you all, because I think too that Black authors and Black books and Black bookstores like that, they matter. I just appreciate the work that you all do.
Well, we go the extra mile because we look for more than one email. And what I have found is that when someone works at a university, they're more apt to respond to their EDU email than Gmail or Yahoo or whatever. So
I tried to keep my life separate. It didn't work. Yeah.
So that was the second effort. But I've learned over the years that if someone is at a university, and that you can find the email easier that way too.
Yep. But I actually think with you, I responded like you got a quicker response because it went to my web email, because that wasn't like full of traffic. Like my Howard email is just.
Oh, okay. Well, I did it twice. So.
You did. You got me. You got me. and as soon as I saw it, I was like, yes, no question. Okay. Let's do it. Like there was never a like, well, can we? Like, let's go. What do we got? Like, because the kind of work of audience building and creating space for authors and creating space for like books, like that too is its own kind of story. Like I'm almost done with Char Adams's book on the Black bookstore.
Okay.
So like those are stories that have to, Black owned. Yeah, those are stories that have to be told as well. I was actually on a panel with her at the Texas Book Festival, so I had gotten like about 3 quarters through it.
I was at the Texas Book Festival. We had a booth.
That thing was huge.
We had a double booth. I never got to leave the booth because we were so busy the whole time.
Well, that's good.
I didn't know you were there.
That's good. No, I didn't even know to look for you. It was like that thing was like massive. It was
it's massive.
I wish I had known. But there are a couple of podcasts, like a couple of other things. Like I was just running into people in the hall because it really was full of like just really incredible engagement. So passing through, and that's the kind of thing that I hope that people understand, like that network is so small, or the field is so small that literally passing by people, you're like, oh, hey, like what time is it? Dang, I'm gonna miss you, but I hope to catch you at this point. Oh, hey, like, oh yeah, well, are you like, and then we all were like trying to go, we were basically going to most of the same stuff, but it was, the conversation with Char was good.
Yeah. Well, we're actually a little bit past our time, and we're going to have Char on the show. I think we're working on the dates, so we've already made contact with them. So thank you so much for being a guest on the show. You're very, very knowledgeable about the industry as well as Toni Morrison.
Yeah. So, thank you. My pleasure. My pleasure.
And congratulations on your book. I hope it continues to do well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'll be getting it because I just love her work as an editor, and I think this is something that's going to be inspiring for anybody who works in the editing space.
Yep. In this space, like writing, I agree. Like I was thinking about it as Morrison as editor, and I'm thinking about it from the perspective as scholar. It only occurred to me later, like, wait a minute, this is like important for publishing. This is important for editors. This is important for writers, all of it. So thank you all. And everybody, Toni at Random, one of the best Christmas presents you'll ever buy. Kwanzaa, early Black History Month. You can do it.
All of that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all.
Okay. Have a great night.
Thank you for tuning in, and join us next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern for another edition of Black Authors Matter TV.